Righty, it looks like we've got the main amount of people for now. If anyone else trickles in, at least there's a recording if they missed the first portion, but we might as well get started. So kia ora, good morning everyone, and welcome to the first webinar in the Eagle webinar series for 2024. And today's webinar is about migrating to ArcGIS Pro. As a quick introduction, I'm Jess and I'm a technical support analyst here at Eagle Technology. And Claire and Jack, would you like to introduce yourselves briefly as well?
Hi everybody, I'm Claire. I'm the GIS Training and Education Lead at Eagle Technology based in Wellington.
Hey everybody, I'm Jack and I'm a recent GIS graduate here based in Wellington.
Awesome, thank you for that, Jack and Claire. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Today's topics we'll be discussing migrating to ArcGIS Pro by breaking it down into 3 different areas. So in part 1, we'll discuss users by looking at a demonstration of what ArcGIS Pro has to offer. In part 2, we'll be discussing managers and how you can, administrators, and how you can effectively manage and administrate your ArcGIS Pro software. And in part 3, this is all about managers, looking into why you should migrate to ArcGIS Pro, along with the challenges that this has involved. We'll then follow this up with some helpful resources about ArcGIS Pro, and then we want to hear from you during our live Q&A session. So for this Q&A session, how to ask questions, you'll find the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions at any time throughout the webinar, and we'll do our best to address these at the end of the webinar in that very same Q&A section. Now, we do have a very quick poll just for you all today before we start today's webinar. If you could please let us know how you see yourself within your organization. Are you a user, are you a manager or an administrator? And you should see this poll pop up in front of you now. Cool, we've got some good results coming in there. Awesome, so it looks like the majority, or about half of you, are mainly users, but we do have a good mix also of administrators and managers in there. Awesome, thank you all for participating in that. It gives us a good idea of what kind of portions of today's webinar you might be most interested in. So first up, we have Jack, who's going to take us through ArcGIS Pro for users. So I'll hand over to you now, Jack.
Thanks for that, Jess. Can you see my screen all right?
Yep, we can see it.
So today I'm going to take you through a quick overview of the interface of ArcGIS Pro and also the new updates of ArcGIS Pro 3.2. ArcGIS Pro offers a user-friendly interface designed to streamline GIS workflows. At the core of this interface are several key components that enhance user experience and efficiency. Here in the top left, we have the Project tab. The Project tab serves as the central hub for managing all aspects of a GIS project. It provides access to project-specific settings, properties, and metadata, allowing users to organize their work effectively. Here we can see some of the metadata of my project, including a thumbnail, a summary, the description, and tags. At the top of the screen, we have the ribbon. The ribbon in ArcGIS Pro dynamically adapts to users' actions and preferences, presenting relevant tools and commands based on the current workflow. Organized into tabs and groups, it ensures quick access to essential functionalities without overwhelming the interface. This responsive feature streamlines GIS tasks, minimizing search time and supporting uninterrupted workflow progression. Overall, the ribbon enhances users' efficiency by providing a tailored and intuitive interface experience. The command search box offers a quick and convenient way to locate specific tools or commands within ArcGIS Pro by simply typing keywords like so. Users can instantly find the functionality they need, saving time and reducing the learning curve. Here we can see the tool that I just searched now. The Contents pane displays all the layers and maps and data frames within the project, providing a visual representation of the spatial data hierarchy. Users can efficiently manage and organize their data layers, adjust symbology, and control visibility. Similarly, the catalog pane serves as a comprehensive catalog of all data sources, including databases, folders, and connections within folders. It also provides access to the portal, where you can access all online data that is in your content, your organizations, or public data through ArcGIS Online or the Living Atlas, as well as the new computer pane where you can drag and drop data straight from your C drive. Pro 3.2 now offers 4 new field data types. Here we have date only, which stores the date but no time values, time only, which stores the time but no date values, timestamp offset, which allows you to store date and time and also includes an offset form, and big integer, when you need to store whole numbers that exceed the long integer data type range, which I'll show you how to use now. Related to these 2 new field data types are 2 other new concepts, 64-bit object IDs and high precision time. By default, tables and feature classes are created with 32-bit OIDs. However, there are certain circumstances where certain object ID values need to be greater than 2.14 billion. The Migrate Object ID to 64-bit geoprocessing tool can be used to migrate the object ID field to 64-bit as shown now, which means now we can edit our field and utilize this big integer option, like so. You can save edits. You can now also use the Migrate Date field to high precision geoprocessing tool, which enables the date field now to be able to store millisecond precision. Here we can see the date score is just in seconds. However, when I run this tool, it will now show the millisecond options, allowing you to store highly precise times. Next is thematic map series. Here we have a layer of Massey University showing off the infrastructure in the area, as well as all the trees that are around the campus. Here we have grouped these layers together, and now I'll apply the radio group layer to see these groups, which will then make it so you can just turn on and off one layer at a time. Now I want to create a layout for each of these layers that are part of the group so I can share it with my wider team. I can go into my layouts, and now in 3.2 I can use thematic map series located here. I can select my Palmerston Massey radiolator, which will then create a new layout for every layer in the chosen radio group layer. As I scroll through them, I can see my map features and legends update dynamically for each different layout. Here I have a layer of delivery routes and stops for a delivery company based in Christchurch. Now with the new update, you can create a representation of your geodatabase with Generate a Schema report. In the catalog pane, you can right-click your geodatabase, hover over Export, and in the context menu, select Generate Schema Report. Fill out the tool's requirement, such as the output location, and name. And then you can choose what type of format you prefer out of JSON, Excel, HTML, and a PDF. We're going to select the Excel format and click Run. I've already run this tool, so now I can go to the File Explorer and open this Excel. The report will open on the table of contents, and you'll be able to use the hyperlinks to navigate back and forth between sheets. You can also sort and filter how you normally would in Excel. And when you're done, go back to the default geodatabase sort using the geodatabase order field and return to the table of contents using the ribbon at the bottom. Another new feature that you can use in a local or global scene is 3D base maps, which you can select from the base maps dialog when your active portal is set to ArcGIS Online. 3D base maps leverage global OpenStreetMap buildings and trees, allowing you to easily add reference data to enhance your scenes. Here, I've applied the OpenStreetMap 3D base map to a local scene in Christchurch. Here, you can create a mask, like so, to the 3D buildings, and create a feature layer as the mask layer and press OK. You're then going to go into your edit and edit the building mask layer and decide whether you're going to exclude this layer or include it. In this case, I choose to exclude this layer. Once you sketch out the area you are wanting to exclude and press complete, you will now see all the 3D objects in that sketch have disappeared. I'll go ahead and save my edits. And now I can turn on my own layer, which is a BIM dataset of a library in Christchurch, to see how it would look in a 3D scene of the surrounding area. Which is very cool. Now in Pro 3.2, you can edit in a single workspace, which supports discarding edits for non-version data. You can enable this in the editing options within the session group. Now this option is enabled, you will see a new pane appear when you click Edit. You can view the editability status of each layer within the map view, as well as can pan through all the maps and scenes in the workspace. Now let me do some edits on one of my feature classes that is non-versioned. Here I will choose one of the Massey buildings as I'm wanting to edit some of the attributes within one of the buildings. Here I've turned on edit and then selected the building. I will then go to the attribute table till I find the field teaching room and rename it Recreation Center. And then also change the teaching room capacity to 30. Now that I've made those changes, I'll press apply. After the edits are complete, I can choose to save these edits or discard them. I'll discard these ones and we'll press the edit button again to turn off editing. A new layer type is also available, 3D tiles, to visualize 3D objects and mesh 3D tiles datasets. 3D tiles are an OGC supported standard such as indexed scene layers, allowing you to visualize large amount of 3D content. You can choose a tile set in a supported file format such as JSON or FreeTZ on the Add Data dialog box. Here we have a 3D tile of Wellington Central. Leveraging some of the capabilities such as exploratory 3D analysis. Here I'm going to select View Shed to see what buildings are visible from a certain point of view from a person walking down Lambton Quay. Here, whatever is in green is visible from this angle, and whatever is in pink is not visible. Save styles. You can export all the save style items of a project to a style in one step. The style items option and sharing. You can also allow duplicates in the style. For example, store two versions of the same color, one that is used in a map and another used in a layout. Or you can streamline the style by saving only one instant of each duplicate. The style is named the same as the project and stored in the home folder unless you specify otherwise. The new style is connected to the current project where you can refine style item names, tags, and other properties. All the symbols, colors, and layout items in any map scene or layout in the project are organized into one style file that you can use in a different project or share with someone else. Here we can take a look at all the point symbols that were used in the project, or we can go back and take a look at all the line symbols in the project. In ArcGIS Pro, feature drawing order refers to the sequence in which geographic features are displayed on a map. It determines how point, line, and polygon features are rendered visually. Understanding and managing this order is crucial for creating clear and accurate maps. Here we have an area at Tomato Peak and Hawke's Bay, and we have a bird's eye view of the famous redwoods. However, we can only see the redwoods in this view. So I'm going to change the feature drawing order and refine it by tree height. So now the smaller plants, such as the ferns and shrubs, will now draw on top. Now we can see all the plants in the redwoods. Thank you for that. Now back over to you, Jess.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jack. That was really great. So let's discuss now the migration to ArcGIS Pro from an administrator's perspective. So one of the key differences with using ArcGIS Pro versus ArcMap is how users can be managed. The cards that you can see here on the screen are snippets of information that's available in our Migrating to ArcGIS Pro hub site. This site is your guide to effectively migrating to ArcGIS Pro, and it breaks the process down into the same three parts that we're discussing today. And these snippets are specifically taken from the resources to administrators section. So if you've been utilizing ArcMap so far and have not dived into the world of ArcGIS Pro, you may be unaware that you're entitled to ArcGIS Pro licensing and its corresponding ArcGIS Online account. Once you've set up your ArcGIS Online account, you can begin to look at the user management of ArcGIS Pro for your organization. With ArcGIS Pro, user management is very, very simple. As an ArcGIS Online administrator, you can monitor the ArcGIS Pro licenses available to your organization by assigning, and reassigning them to members, managing them in a way that ensures members can access ArcGIS Pro as needed. You can work to invite and add members to your organization who you can share your data and licensing with. So, as noted, managing licensing by allocating and unallocating licenses where needed. In cases where extensions may be minimal in your organization, this is especially useful. So you might have 10 users, but just one extension that gets shared around the group. You can simply enable and unenable this when needed for different users. You also have the ability to disable offline usage for users in ArcGIS Pro, as well as the ability to enable it when needed. So this is another way you can effectively manage the access or the control that your users have of their ArcGIS Pro. By using ArcGIS Online to effectively manage your users within Pro, you can make sure you're always on top of how many licenses are available, who's using them, and when they're being used. You can also work to help your users gain access to downloading ArcGIS Pro. You can reach out to the Eagle support or licensing team to get your users added into My Esri, where they can access download permissions. From here, they should be able to download the software and start working on their projects. So if we quickly take a look at the Migrating to ArcGIS Pro hub site, which hopefully should pop up on the screen here for you, you'll notice these three cards as mentioned before. For an administrator, we just click this administrator card, and it will take us into this main page. So this is everything you need to know as an administrator to start effectively administering your organization. So as mentioned, we're looking at user management. So you can talk about downloading Pro, inviting members, general user management, as well as some additional support features that are provided. You can also access basic system requirements to make sure that your organization is set correctly to be able to start using and utilizing ArcGIS Pro, as well as quite a good guide to how to do this process. So next up, we have named user licensing. So licensing and access is easier than it ever has been with ArcGIS Pro. Compared to ArcMap, ArcGIS Pro has the ability to utilize named users from your ArcGIS portal. Pro named users licensing can come in a few different forms. It can come from both ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, and that will come in the form of a creator user type with an add-on Pro license, or more recently, we've got the GIS professional user types, which come in basic, standard, and advanced. In the past, single-use and concurrent use licensing was the way to manage your licenses, but now this isn't necessary. Single-use licensing has been notoriously hard to manage with no understanding of where and who has licensing installed. In some instances, you could have tens, if not hundreds, of authorizations on both old and new workstations, leading to confusion and a lot of difficulty in managing who actually has access to your licenses. With ArcGIS Pro, we can just simply log into the software using your ArcGIS Online credentials, and if a license has been assigned to you to use ArcGIS Pro, you'll immediately gain access. This means that you can access your work from other devices for when and if you're outside of the office or at a different location. This might be especially useful for those of you who have a hybrid work situation of both work from home and in the office. Although there's a little bit more setup involved in getting named user licensing, it takes away the lack of control and it puts it into the hands of the administrators, aiding to a more effective user management in ArcGIS Pro. It also helps avoid the dreaded licensing authorization failure that often comes with single-use licensing and sometimes concurrent use, as it's just simply cloud-based and access straight onto your machine. If you'd like to discuss moving to a named user model from your current single use or concurrent use, please reach out to the licensing team and your account manager to discuss that further. Another key question we get is which portal do I utilize? So if you've already been utilizing ArcGIS Pro, you may have noticed the option to configure not only your licensing portal, but your data portal. So with ArcGIS Pro, these can be configured separately. They don't have to be one and the same for both. If your data is stored in ArcGIS Online, but your organization manages their licensing from ArcGIS Enterprise, ArcGIS Pro can be configured for this very same setup. So this is managed from the screenshot here under the portal tab and the settings. So you can see you've got the option to utilize both ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise. You just have to pick which your active portal is going to be. Now this is separate to the licensing portal, which you'll notice you have to configure to single use, concurrent use, or named user. But this just means you can connect to both, and it makes it a bit more accessible for organizations utilizing both environments or utilizing both the on-premise and cloud-based configurations. So how about virtualization? So ArcGIS Pro can be virtualized, can be used in a virtualized environment, both on-premise and in the cloud. For in a cloud environment, our cloud-based virtualization environments are adding, expanding, and improving the technology required to support Pro being used in a cloud-based environment. This includes geographic processing units, resources either shared or passed through, as well as just linking to an online premise environment. Providers such as Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google have some offerings that have the necessary resources available to support Pro in a cloud environment. We then have on-premise virtualization. So using ArcGIS Pro in an on-premise virtualization environment is very common for a lot of our users. ArcGIS Pro provides unparalleled geospatial functionality with dynamic user experiences, as well as smoothing, panning, and zooming of detailed 2 and 3D maps. Now, to deliver this kind of capability, the virtualization environment must support either shared or virtual graphic geoprocessing units or pass-through GPUs. Another common situation is many of our Mac users might have noticed that ArcGIS Pro cannot be directly just installed onto a Mac machine, and using things such as VMs is a common way to get around this and still be able to use your standard device to access this software. Cool, so I'm going to pass over to Claire now to discuss ArcGIS Pro for managers.
Thanks, Jess. So as Jess mentioned, we've sort of looked at ArcGIS Pro and migrating to ArcGIS Pro in three ways. So from a user perspective, an administrator perspective, and a manager perspective. And so I would like to just talk through some of the things that we need to, as managers, be aware of when we are shifting to ArcGIS Pro. And I guess the first one is trying to justify why your organization should actually shift to ArcGIS Pro. And one of the things that we can justify the shift to is that ArcGIS Pro is a real modern and fast application. ArcMap has been around for quite some time. It has been around probably for at least 20 years. And so ArcGIS Pro is a way to really modernize your organization and its use of ArcGIS. And because of that, it has a really intuitive interface and workspace that you can work within, which includes being project-based. So you have a project inside of ArcGIS Pro and you can hang all of your maps associated with that project into that location rather than having multiple map documents all over the place. The other thing that we quite often talk about when we're talking about ArcGIS Pro is just how easy it is to connect to the other components of the ArcGIS system. So ArcGIS Pro enables us to more easily share items across the entire system. And it allows us easy access to what we commonly call web GIS. So that web of the Internet of Things, the web of the applications that come as part of the ArcGIS system, we have access to those within ArcGIS Pro. And many of those things we don't have access to from ArcMap. The other thing I guess, that is really an important thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about why your organization should shift to ArcGIS Pro is ArcMap is being retired. And so if you don't shift to ArcGIS Pro and you retain your ArcMap licensing, you will actually be working on software that isn't supported by Esri any longer. And so that inherently has some issues around what you can and can't do with the software. However, in saying that, those are the things that you could think about and how you can justify your organization working to ArcGIS Pro or shifting to ArcGIS Pro. I am aware that there are small organizations that might be able to actually shift very easily to ArcGIS Pro. They might have one or two instances of ArcMap. But for larger organizations, there might be some real challenges to actually shifting to ArcGIS Pro. You might have a really locked down IT environment. You might have a huge number of computers that actually can't support ArcGIS Pro. So you have to go through a rather large process of upgrading infrastructure, and I'm thinking more laptops and desktops here, the actual physical hardware, to actually be able to support ArcGIS Pro. I'm hoping that none of us still have just 32-bit machines, but ArcGIS Pro is a 64-bit application, and so it does need a 64-bit machine to actually work with the software. It also requires a graphics card, and as Jess mentioned with the virtualization of ArcGIS Pro, that is a consideration that your virtual machine is on a resource that has that graphics card. And that is a little bit more of an expense to get that graphics card enabled for you. So you might actually not only have to think about upgrading software, but you might have to think about upgrading of infrastructure to be able to support your migration to ArcGIS Pro. The other thing that can be challenging is the resources to actually implement ArcGIS Pro, especially in a large organization where you might have to get resources from your IT department, perhaps, to support your migration. And in a lot of large organizations, we have actually seen a step migration to ArcGIS Pro. So saying, if we've got a GIS team, let the GIS team upgrade first. And then if we've got GIS people who are in other business units, we're going to gradually migrate them to ArcGIS Pro. There is some resources on our Migrating to ArcGIS Pro website, which might help with some of that resourcing components and what you actually need. So I am on the Managers Resources page here. So this is one of our sort of personas that we have inside of our website, which is Resources for Managers. And I've just scrolled down here to our checklists that we have. And we have 3 checklists, and they're ranging from a small business to a large business. And the large business is talking about a business that has an IT department, that has may have a project management office that you need to take your migration process through, and what you might need to think about when you're doing that. And those items for a large business can be that time-consuming factor. So if you're only just considering migrating to ArcGIS Pro, I do recommend that you get onto those processes relatively quickly, because that retirement date of ArcMap is actually coming through towards us much quicker than we probably would anticipate. It seems much closer now this year in 2024 than it did last year in 2023. So these checklists are freely available for you to use in thinking about how you're going to migrate to ArcGIS Pro. The other thing to think about, and oftentimes it's the thing that's a little bit harder to justify why we need to do it, because it's more about nurturing the people in your organization than the technology, is managing the change that going to ArcGIS Pro actually is going to be for your employees and for your GIS people. So recently I taught a Migrating to ArcGIS Pro course that we offer, and a number of staff members had come on to that from different organizations. And the one thing that they said was they had tried to do the change by themselves of moving from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro, but inevitably, because of tight timeframes for projects, they went back to what they were familiar to in ArcMap. And so they felt like they needed to take 2 days out of their work schedule to actually sit on a course to find out how ArcGIS Pro actually worked. And so we need to take those sorts of things into consideration when we are actually migrating to ArcGIS Pro. One is to sort of build some time into people's business as usual to actually be able to make that migration. Don't just assume that people will be able to make that on by themselves as well. So they may need some help with some resourcing or some training courses to be able to do that. And the upside of that course that I was referring to is that all 8 of the people that attended at the end of the course said, I'm actually going to go back to my workplace and I'm going to start using ArcGIS Pro for everything that I do, because they felt comfortable with that migration of workflows into ArcGIS Pro. But I guess change doesn't stop when people are fully on board with ArcGIS Pro. There will always be workflows that they don't maybe do once a year, that they just need a little bit of time to actually be able to figure out what they are inside of ArcGIS Pro. So part of that change management process is giving people the time that they need to be able to do that migration of processes, migration of where's that functionality. I used to be able to find it in ArcMap. I can't find it in ArcGIS Pro. And also being able to have time to go, actually, we've got some new workflows that are available inside of ArcGIS Pro that aren't available in ArcMap. How do we utilize that to benefit the organization, to benefit the business that we are actually involved in? So yeah, do take some time when thinking about how you're going to manage your ArcGIS Pro and migration inside your organization. And on that note, I would just like to launch another poll here. And this poll is really just to ask the question, from thinking about past deployments of new software, how well do you think your organization actually manages change? So let me launch that poll now. It should be popping up on your screen shortly. And so you can answer the question there with some different options. And we've got some answers sort of coming into that poll now, and I'm pleased to see that many of you have said somewhat well for change management, but we are seeing some people saying that maybe change management is not something that's managed so well in your organization. Just give people another couple of minutes or a couple of seconds to put their answers into the poll, and then I will share those results with everybody. Thanks for answering that question. Some very interesting results there that you should be able to see. So I'm going to hand back to Jess now, and she's going to take us through just some of the resources that are actually available for migrating to ArcGIS Pro.
Cool, thank you for that, Claire. So yes, as Claire noted, there's a few resources available to us when we are looking to migrate to ArcGIS Pro. So first, the main one is this Migrating to Pro hub site that you've heard both Claire and I speak about a few times now. So the site is your real true guide to migrating to ArcGIS Pro, with aspects from a user's perspective, an administrator's perspective, and a manager's perspective, as long with some additional places of where to go for support and where to find additional resources outside of this. The second place, however, is our ArcGIS Pro blog site. So this is where we provide, Eagle and Esri provide constant updates on the technology and cool insights into how others are using the technology. I'll try bring it up for you now here. So this is the ArcGIS Pro blog site. So as you can see, there's quite a plethora of articles that are available to us, talking about sharing, collaboration, data management, mapping, and then you start seeing some more user-specific stories about how they're utilizing ArcGIS Pro within their organizations. So again, going back to our hub site, not only do you have these administrator and manager resources, you also have user resources. So this is where if you're just a user, you don't manage ArcGIS Pro, you're not the administrator for your organization, but you want some extra tips about how to use ArcGIS Pro, or where do you start, for example, this is a really great place to look. In a moment, I'll pop the link into the chat so everyone can have a look if you're not familiar with the site already. But again, it's just a great resource to get you started with ArcGIS Pro and really starting to get into that migration. So where to start with training? So we have an instructor-led courses available for ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro. And to find times on when these courses are available, please have a look at our training page on the Eagle website. We then also have the ArcGIS Pro basic courses available on the Esri training site, along with many other courses, depending on your skill level and what you're wanting to start looking at in ArcGIS Pro for training. Cool, so that brings us to our Q&A time. Hopefully you've been having a think about what kind of questions you might want to start asking, if any have popped into your mind. Again, just as a refresher, that Q&A portion should be on your right-hand side on the panel, where you can simply just pop in a question and we'll try to answer it for you here. Just give you a few moments to think of any if you do, and we'll come back and circle together and have a discussion on those.
While we're waiting for a few people to actually pop some questions into that Q&A panel. And by the way, if it hasn't shown up on your view, there is a little Q&A button just at the top of your screen as well, which will open up that panel. Jess, I talked about the retirement of ArcMap. Can you confirm for us what the actual retirement date is for ArcMap?
Yep, so the next upcoming date is actually next month. It moves into mature support, so that's the step before retirement. But then retirement is going to be following it's currently set to March 2026. So still a bit of time, but it's definitely starting to look like it should start moving, especially with the movement into mature support next month.
So what does mature support mean for people who don't know?
Mature support is a lot less and a lot more limited resources start becoming available. You can still work with Esri to log support cases, but it starts becoming less and less help available to you. You still have access to those online resources, but the further you get into mature support and close to retirement, those resources start to become a lot more limited, and things like updates are no longer occurring for ArcMap, so you're not going to get any fixes for bugs or anything of the likes. So it's definitely recommended to start moving, otherwise you might start running into some issues as it moves into that retirement phase.
So we have a question here. Obviously, somebody has tried to upgrade or move to ArcGIS Pro 3 and is asking about why they have to update their .NET version of their software on their actual computer.
Yeah, so this has been a bit more common as people have been moving into or upgrading their versions into Pro.3. So all this means is the current .NET that's installed on your machine does not fulfill the minimum requirements to install ArcGIS Pro. And ArcGIS Pro is unable to recognize the Microsoft.NET desktop runtime or Microsoft.NET SDK components installed on the machines. So all this means is you can simply search the error message that pops up when this occurs into Google or the likes, and you'll get a support document that will tell you exactly what versions you need to install to match the version of ArcGIS Pro you're trying to install. So it just simply means what's currently installed on your machine doesn't quite meet the right minimum requirements to install ArcGIS Pro effectively.
Okay, so if somebody was managing that install process through an IT department, they'd have to make sure that the IT department did that test first before trying to install ArcGIS Pro.
Exactly, and that's why it's always recommended to take a look at those minimum requirements that are also available in that hub site, so you know that you've got exactly what you need before starting that install process.
Brilliant. Great, thanks for that. I think you've answered this question. I've got a question here about where I can go to find resources for the transition to ArcGIS Pro. And I have just actually, the chat is actually, I've just found out, disabled on our webinar. So I've actually just put them in a discussion window. So hopefully they have come through to you for that Migrating to ArcGIS Pro website. And then you can go in and look at your user, your manager, your administrator, sort of personas for who you are in your journey in migrating to ArcGIS Pro. And there's also, I put in a discussion window as well, our link to our Learn page here at Eagle. So if you would like to have a look at that Migrating from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro course, you can do a search on that. And also the e-learning that Jess recommended there with the resources is available from the Esri Academy course, and you should, if you've got ArcGIS Pro, your username should give you access to actually run through that e-learning just by signing into the Esri Academy website. If not, you might have to talk to your administrator just about enabling Esri access on your username and password. or I'm sure, Jess, you could help out with that as well.
Yep, definitely.
It's got a question here from Joy. Will you work with other related software companies such as DHI on this migration? Now, I'm not familiar with DHI, but I'm going to take a stab at trying to translate the question to something that we hopefully can answer. So there are a number of third-party extensions to ArcMap, which have the majority of them have been migrated over to ArcGIS Pro. And the other thing that we need to be aware of is the utility networks for the utility sector as well. That is a relatively new product from Esri to be able to migrate geometric networks from ArcMap into use in ArcGIS Pro. And so if you are looking at working in that sort of utility space, do have a look at that utility network and see how it could assist you with your migration to ArcGIS Pro. The other thing that I was just thinking about with this question is if you've got an external IT company that is actually providing services for you as well. And I think I might pass that over to Jess because she does sit on our support team. So she might be better in the place to better answer that question. So Jess, over to you on that one.
Yeah, so as Claire mentioned, we've got lots of third-party products, but if you've got an IT team you're working with directly who's helping you make this migration to Pro, they can work with both yourselves and us in the support team to make sure if you're running into any hurdles, we can hopefully get you past that point by some quick workarounds or resolutions. But just making sure that your IT team is familiar with your infrastructure and your current setup, so they can also make sure that you've got that same setup and system requirements are all correct and it's all going to make a smooth transition for you. I also don't know, unfortunately, about what company DHI is, but the working with other software companies is definitely something we do to try and make all of these migrations into ArcGIS Pro as seamless as possible, depending on which different organizations and workflows you're using yourselves.
Cool. Fantastic. I hope that answers your question, Joy. And Joyce just actually popped in the question and answer that DHI uses ArcGIS as a base platform. So it must be a solution on top of that ArcGIS. And so it's that third-party extension. So we have the most recent third-party extension that has moved entirely to ArcGIS Pro is actually in the forestry space. And we did do a little bit of work to help enable that migration for people when they had questions about how to do certain things. I do know that there was some resources that we used from Eagle to help with that process. We don't actively pursue those processes. It's very much the software vendor coming to us for assistance.
Yeah, and just to add there, if you've got any third-party products that are not currently compatible with ArcGIS Pro, but you're interested in seeing if it's a possibility, I'd definitely recommend to reach out to maybe if you've got an account manager already, or flick that onto someone in the support team, and we can definitely direct you in the right direction to see if we can answer those questions.
We've also got another question here about whether I can take ArcGIS Pro offline. And you briefly mentioned that, Jess, in the section that you talked about. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so ArcGIS Pro we can take offline for both licensing and our actual content. So you can make sure your licensing is configured. So if you want your users to be able to utilize an offline space, you can enable offline usage. So this will also allow them to take your web tile layers or your web feature layers into an offline environment without relying on being connected to still access them. So you can just simply use the download map option, which is available in ArcGIS Pro, and this will allow you to take these web layers offline. So it will allow you to use pretty much all of your content in an offline disconnected space, and then you can republish these and resave them once you've accessed a connected environment once again. But you can still save offline, so you're not risking losing any content when you reconnect.
Okay. So if, for example, extreme example, if you were going down to Antarctica, which actually one of our colleagues has just recently done, and connectivity might be a bit dodgy on the ice, that they could get around that by bringing their content offline as well as their license offline.
Yep, exactly. The only thing to be mindful of is with taking licenses offline, they can get stuck if they're not checked back in correctly. So if you are looking into doing things like taking your licensing offline, just make sure you recheck them back in once you're finished so you don't potentially face any of these challenges.
So how do you do that check-in of an
So
offline license?
an administrator can do it straight through ArcGIS Online. They can do it through the configuring licensing section. However, you can also do it yourself by checking in and checking out or enabling the option within your own ArcGIS Pro site. This is available under the licensing tab and settings. But there's some documentation on how to do this as well if you just simply search in ArcGIS Online offline licensing.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jess. There's just a little question here about some modelers are having issues to using ArcGIS Pro as they are used to using ArcMap. And I just wanted to mention just a couple of things in this process. If you are actually using Model Builder in ArcMap and want to use the models that you've created in ArcMap in ArcGIS Pro, I would recommend copying them before you open and save them in ArcGIS Pro, or you may suddenly find that you can't actually open them in ArcMap any longer. So that is just one thing about shifting from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro around that modeling side that I recommend that you have a look at. The other thing is if you're using Python scripts to do your analysis inside of ArcMap, the version of Python that is used with ArcGIS Pro is actually different to the version of Python that is used with ArcMap. And so there is a little tool that you can run on your Python code to just identify areas where there may be issues that you may just need to upgrade your Python code to the next version of Python code that ArcGIS Pro actually uses. So those are the two things just around that sort of modeling side of things that you need to be aware of. And all the geoprocessing tools that we're used to seeing in ArcMap are actually available inside of ArcGIS Pro. So you can just do that search inside of the geoprocessing pane in ArcGIS Pro to find the tools that you used to use for modeling. And there's also some really cool new functionality that is available and new tools that are available in ArcGIS Pro that aren't available in ArcMap. So I don't know if anybody does any suitability modeling. There is a new suitability modeler wizard inside of ArcGIS Pro, which sort of takes suitability modeling out of that black box. You used to really have to understand it to be able to do it inside of ArcMap. We can now bring it into more of a visual GUI to be able to do suitability modeling much more quickly inside of ArcGIS Pro. Jess, I don't know, have you any other thoughts on sort of that change for modeling between ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro?
Not specifically for modeling, but I think as with anything, you're always going to have some changes that are not familiar to you. So I think that's where all these resources come in extremely handy to making that migration just as simple as possible. And using tips like Claire's just mentioned is the key, I think.
Yeah, and also, I guess, going back to those resources, there are some really specific resources on how to do modeling in ArcGIS Pro on the Esri Academy site. And all of our analysis courses that we run as instructor-led courses at Eagle are using ArcGIS Pro. So you might want to think about coming on one of those as well, just to get yourself more familiar with the ArcGIS Pro modeling or analysis components that are available. And I guess another thing that is, I'm just trying to think of some new functionality in ArcGIS Pro that you don't have available in ArcMap. If anybody is interested in those buzzwords like Geo AI and deep learning, that those packages that we use for those things are available to be used inside of ArcGIS Pro if you're wanting to do some of that sort of modeling inside of the ArcGIS system as well. looks like we might have covered all the questions, Jess. So I just wanted to round us up by saying a thank you. A thank you to Jess and Jack who've been with me in the webinar, but thank you also to everybody who has attended live for the webinar. We really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your day to attend. And just wanted to really give you a little bit of a rundown of what's also coming for our webinar series when it comes to the next wee while. And so let me just make sure that I'm sharing my screen. I think I might have not been sharing my screen here. So before I start taking any more talking, upcoming webinars that we have. So we do have a Migrating to ArcGIS Experience Builder webinar coming up at 11 o'clock on the 29th of February. So that's looking at if you've got applications that are written in Web App Builder, how do you get them, migrate them to ArcGIS Experience Builder? And we're also going to do a little bit of what ArcGIS Experience Builder is in that webinar. We've then got another webinar on the 7th of March, which is the ArcGIS for Everyone webinar, and that is how we can make ArcGIS accessible to some of the organisations that might not inherently be using ArcGIS, like non-profits, for example. So if you're involved in any of those non-profit areas or conservation groups, we're going to be talking a little bit about that in that webinar. And then you'll see we've got quite a big gap before our next webinar in May. And that is really just because we have our regional user conferences in April. The dates have been announced on the user group website. So if you would like to have a look at where those dates are and where those RUCs are actually being held, please do go to the user group website and see that. Registration is not quite open yet, but the dates are there, so you can save the date for those regional user conferences. Once we come back from those regional user conferences, which are spread out across April, we are going into a webinar on the 2nd of May, which is going to look at how we can use distributed collaboration inside of ArcGIS. So do keep an eye out for those and come and register for ones that you are particularly interested in. But that is us for the day. Thank you very much once again for attending, and we hope to see you either at an event or another webinar in the near future. Ka kite.
Ka kite. Thank you, everyone.